It's Friday, everyone. What do we do on Fridays here at the Hint Hive? That's right, we smash the patriarchy. Hello, my ladies of the Hive. Welcome back to the Hint Hive, Amplifying Women's Voices, the podcast where we unpack the psychology, politics, relationships, social conditioning, and emotional realities that shape women's lives. I'm your host, Kelly Hint, aka the Queen Bee of this hive, psychotherapist, feminist life coach, and your partner in helping women reclaim their voices, their power, their peace, and their authenticity in a world that still profits from women staying quiet, agreeable, emotionally accommodating, and endlessly self-sacrificing. Today, we are talking about anger. Specifically, the difference between anger in women versus anger in men. And more importantly, the way society responds to that anger. Because let's be honest, the world reacts very differently depending on who is angry. A man raises his voice, he's passionate. A woman raises her voice, she's unstable. A man gets assertive, he's confident. A woman gets assertive, she's aggressive. I've had that one tossed at me a few times. A man is intimidating, he's powerful. A woman is intimidating, she's a problem. A man is emotionally reactive, people say he's under stress. A woman is emotionally reactive, suddenly she is crazy, hormonal, or just too much. And if we are being real, women receive these messages from childhood. Girls are taught to smile, to be polite, to keep the peace, to not make people uncomfortable, to not be dramatic, to not be difficult, to not be that woman. Meanwhile, boys are often taught that anger is one of the only acceptable emotions that they are allowed to express openly. And that difference in conditioning affects relationships, mental health, communication, workplace dynamics, safety, boundaries, self-worth, and even physical health. So today we're diving into the psychology of anger, how patriarchy shapes emotional expression, why female anger is heavily policed, why male anger is often normalized, the emotional burden that women carry, safety concerns around anger, healthy anger versus destructive anger, how women can reconnect with anger without shame, and why anger can actually become part of healing and liberation. This episode is going to be layered, nuanced, empowering, and probably a little uncomfortable for some people, which means we're probably doing something right. So, grab your coffee, your tea, your emotional support water bottle, and let's get into it. Before we jump into things, here's my disclaimer. Today's episode is going to be very binary. The reason is because we are socialized as male or female, and that matters for this conversation. We do not yet live in a gender-neutral world. Here in the United States, as well as many other societies, we live in a patriarchal system. A system that declares gender norms for boys and for girls, with no room for anything in between. So for anyone listening or watching who identifies as non-binary, receive this through the lens of the gender that you are conditioned as. Okay, now let's start with something incredibly important. Anger is not inherently bad. Seriously, I need every woman listening to really hear that. Anger is not a moral failure. Anger is not proof that you are toxic. Anger is not proof that you are bitter. Anger is not proof that you are unhealed. Anger is a human emotion. And psychologically speaking, anger is often what we call a secondary emotion, meaning that anger is frequently triggered by a deeper emotional experience. Experiences like hurt, fear, rejection, betrayal, humiliation, powerlessness, emotional exhaustion, boundary violations, injustice, disrespect. Anger is often the nervous system's alarm bell, It says something is wrong. Something feels unsafe. Something crossed a line. Something needs attention. And honestly, women have many legitimate reasons to feel angry. Women are expected to perform emotional labor constantly, care for everyone while neglecting themselves, stay nurturing even when exhausted, endure sexism politely, be attractive but not vain, be ambitious but not too intimidating, speak up but not too loudly, be accommodating at all times, absorb emotional stress without complaint, stay calm while being disrespected. And when women finally express frustration after years of swallowing discomfort, society often acts like the anger itself is the problem instead of examining the conditions that create it. That matters. Because healthy anger can actually be protective. Anger can help people set boundaries, recognize mistreatment, leave abusive relationships, protect themselves, advocate for change, defend vulnerable people, reconnect with self-respect, and stop abandoning themselves for approval. The issue is not anger. The issue is how society teaches people to express or suppress it differently based on gender. And that conditioning starts incredibly early. Let's talk about emotional socialization. We touched on this in other episodes, but it's worth repeating. Because boys and girls are not raised emotionally the same way. Research in developmental psychology consistently shows that children receive gendered emotional messaging from a very young age. Girls are often socialized towards agreeableness, caretaking, emotional awareness, relational harmony, conflict avoidance, compliance, politeness, and emotional self-monitoring. Meanwhile, boys are often socialized towards toughness, independence, competition, dominance, emotional suppression, stoicism, and externalizing emotion. Now, here's where things get interesting. Girls are often punished socially for anger. An angry little girl may be called bossy, dramatic, mean, emotional, difficult, aggressive, disrespectful. So many girls unconsciously learn if I express anger, I risk losing love, approval, belonging, or safety. That is huge. Because over time, many women become experts at suppressing anger. I work with a lot of them. Instead of expressing anger outwardly, women may redirect it inward. And that can show up as anxiety, depression, self-criticism, perfectionism, rumination, overthinking, emotional shutdown, chronic guilt, people-pleasing, burnout, and physical symptoms from chronic stress, like autoimmune diseases. Meanwhile, many boys are taught the opposite. They are often discouraged from openly expressing sadness, fear, tenderness, or vulnerability. But anger? Anger is often socially acceptable for boys and men, which means many men unconsciously learn to funnel multiple emotions through anger. Fear becomes anger. Embarrassment becomes anger. Shame becomes anger. Rejection becomes anger. Grief becomes anger. And because society often gives men more social power and physical authority, male anger is more likely to be tolerated, feared into compliance, excused, or normalized. That does not mean that men are naturally more angry. It means that men are socially permitted to express anger more openly. That distinction matters. Because anger exists inside social systems and power structures, and those systems affect who gets punished for emotional expression. Now let's talk about why society fears female anger. Let's really go there. Why does female anger make people so damn uncomfortable? Because female anger threatens systems built on female compliance. An angry woman is harder to manipulate. Ask anyone who's ever dealt with me when I'm angry. A woman connected to her anger may leave unhealthy relationships, reject misogyny, hell yeah, report harassment, refuse emotional labor, demand fairness, challenge authority, set boundaries, stop people-pleasing, hell yes to my girls who are doing the work. I'm working with lots of them. They may say no without apologizing. And how dare they? They may start prioritizing themselves. That disrupts patriarchal expectations. Historically, women who expressed anger were often pathologized. Women have been labeled hysterical, crazy, bitter, emotional, irrational, hormonal, unstable, difficult, and unlikable. And honestly, those labels are often used to dismiss women instead of listening to what they are actually saying. Meanwhile, men displaying anger in leadership settings are often perceived as strong, decisive, powerful, competent, commanding. And research on workplace bias actually supports this. Studies have found that men expressing anger at work are often viewed as more authoritative, while women expressing anger are more likely to be viewed as less competent or overly emotional. Same emotion, different interpretation. And women know this. We have felt it. We have experienced it. Many women spend years performing emotional palatability, smiling when uncomfortable, laughing at inappropriate comments, softening their tone, monitoring facial expressions, trying not to appear intimidating, managing male egos, avoiding conflict to stay safe. That is emotional labor, and it is exhausting. A lot of women are not naturally passive. I'm sure as hell not. They are socially conditioned to calculate risk constantly because female anger can carry consequences. And that brings us to the topic of safety. We need to talk about safety, fear, and the reality that women navigate. This part matters deeply. Women do not experience anger inside the same safety landscape as men, and pretending otherwise ignores reality. Many women have learned through direct experience or observation that expressing anger toward men can escalate danger. Some women have experienced verbal intimidation, emotional abuse, physical violence, threats, coercion, retaliation at work, harassment, reputation attacks, stalking, online abuse, financial punishment, and sexual aggression. So many women are constantly calculating, is it safe to say this? Will this escalate? Will this person retaliate? Will I be believed? Will I lose my job? Will this make me unsafe? That emotional calculation is draining. And unfortunately, it is often necessary. For example, a woman rejecting a man may fear aggression. A woman confronting harassment may fear retaliation. A woman setting boundaries at work may fear career consequences. A woman leaving an abusive relationship may fear escalation. And statistically, women are disproportionately harmed by intimate partner violence. That means many women become hyper-aware of emotional shifts in other people. They learn to read tone, read facial expressions, read body language, read moods. Not because women are weak, but because vigilance can become a survival strategy. So when people casually say, women should just speak up, I need people to understand that many women are already assessing risk before they open their mouths. Healthy empowerment includes safety awareness. Women should not have to choose between honesty and safety, but many do. I know I have. I've had experiences where expressing my feelings, even in a calm and non-emotional way, has led to me getting my ass kicked by a man. I've had things thrown at me. I've been choked. I've been thrown to the floor, all because the person didn't like what I had to say. And if you are listening to this episode and recognizing that someone's anger makes you feel afraid, trapped, intimidated, controlled, or unsafe, please understand that is not healthy emotional expression on their part. That is abuse. Healthy anger does not require fear. Healthy anger does not rely on intimidation. Healthy anger does not remove another person's safety, autonomy, or humanity. And women deserve relationships where they can express emotions honestly without fearing punishment or retaliation. That should not be radical. But sadly, it is. Now let's talk about expression patterns and how anger shows up differently in women and men. Because while every individual is different, there are some common gendered trends shaped by social conditioning. Men are often more socially permitted to externalize anger. That can look like raised voices, aggression, confrontation, intimidation, physical expression, and explosive reactions. Women, on the other hand, are often conditioned to internalize anger. That may show up as crying, withdrawal, overthinking, passive aggression, anxiety, self-blame, emotional suppression, depression, somatic symptoms, and resentment. And here's something important. Women's anger is often misread because women are expected to soften everything. So when a woman speaks directly, people may perceive it as hostile simply because they are not used to women communicating without excessive emotional cushioning. That is not always aggression. Sometimes it is just clarity. And clarity can feel threatening to people who benefit from women doubting themselves. At the same time, men are often harmed by emotional conditioning too. Many men are not taught healthy emotional regulation. They are taught to suppress vulnerability. So some men only feel emotionally powerful when expressing anger. That can create serious relational problems because emotional intimacy requires access to the full emotional spectrum, not just anger. This is why emotional literacy matters for everyone. Women deserve freedom from emotional suppression, and men deserve freedom from emotional restriction. Patriarchy harms everyone differently. Now, before somebody hears this episode and decides that it means everybody should just rage constantly, no. Healthy anger and destructive anger are not the same thing. Healthy anger communicates boundaries, protects well-being, identifies injustice, encourages change, maintains accountability, honors humanity, creates clarity, while destructive anger seeks control, intimidates people, becomes abusive, escalates violence, avoids accountability, causes harm, uses fear as power. And this applies regardless of gender. No one gets a free pass to become abusive. But many women have been taught to fear their own anger so intensely that they disconnect from it entirely. And suppressed anger does not disappear. It leaks. It can become burnout, anxiety, depression, chronic resentment, emotional numbness, irritability, passive aggression, physical tension, self-abandonment, relationship dissatisfaction. Sometimes the woman saying, "I'm fine," is carrying years of swallowed rage. Rage from being dismissed. Rage from being unheard. Rage from being overworked. Rage from being objectified. Rage from being emotionally exhausted. And honestly, a lot of that anger makes sense. The goal is not emotional suppression. The goal is emotional regulation, meaning I can feel anger without becoming destructive. That is emotional maturity. Not pretending that you never feel anger. So how do women reconnect with anger in healthy ways? Let's talk practical tools. First, stop treating anger like a character flaw. Instead of immediately shaming yourself for having angry feelings, ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Maybe your anger is telling you a boundary was crossed. Your needs are being ignored. You are overextending yourself. You are being disrespected. You are carrying too much. You are abandoning yourself to keep peace. Anger often contains important information. Next, learn the difference between assertiveness and aggression. Women are often taught that these are the same thing. They are not. Assertiveness says, this behavior is not acceptable. Aggression says, I want to overpower or intimidate you. Big difference. Women deserve to communicate clearly without apologizing for existing. Next, practice nervous system regulation. When anger activates, the nervous system may move into fight or flight. So, some helpful tools include deep breathing, walking, strength training, grounding exercises, therapy, coaching, somatic work, journaling, screaming into a pillow, seriously, taking space before responding, cold water techniques, and body movement. Now, let me be clear. Regulation is not suppression. It is learning how to respond intentionally. Next, build emotionally safe relationships. Pay attention to how people respond when you express discomfort. Do they listen, dismiss, mock, gaslight, punish, retaliate, intimidate? Healthy relationships allow emotional honesty. You should not have to walk on eggshells constantly. All right, next, let go of the need to be universally liked. This one is hard, especially for women. But powerful women are often labeled difficult by people who benefited from their silence. Women who set boundaries are often disliked by people who expected unlimited access. When I started setting boundaries, man, did I lose a lot of people in my life. And honestly, that is okay. I'm fine with it. And I need you to get fine with it too. Because you are not required to abandon yourself to maintain approval. All right, next. Learn how to express anger early instead of exploding later. A lot of women suppress discomfort until resentment builds into emotional overload. Sometimes healing looks like addressing issues earlier, saying, that hurt me. I'm uncomfortable with that. I need support. That boundary matters to me. And this is important before years of resentment accumulate. And finally, stop confusing emotional numbness with peace. Some women think if I stop feeling anger entirely, I'll finally be healed. Nope. Emotional numbness is not the same thing as peace. True healing means that you can experience emotions without being consumed by them, including anger. All right, Hive, it is time for your affirmation of the week. And this one is for every woman who was taught that her anger made her unlovable. Repeat after me. My anger is not my weakness. It is information, protection, and power. I honor my emotions without abandoning myself. Again, for the women in the back, and because this one is a mouthful, I will say it again. My anger is not my weakness. It is information, protection, and power. I honor my emotions without abandoning myself. Here's what I want every woman listening to remember. You do not have to become smaller to deserve connection. You do not have to silence yourself to deserve love. You do not have to smile through mistreatment to prove that you are emotionally mature. Sometimes, anger is the moment that your spirit finally says, enough. Enough disrespect. Enough self-abandonment. Enough shrinking. Enough silence. Enough tolerating behavior that harms you. And while anger alone is not the destination, it can absolutely become the doorway. The doorway to boundaries. The doorway to healing. The doorway to self-respect. The doorway to freedom. Sometimes the women who change their lives are not the women who never get angry. They are the women who finally stop apologizing for what their anger is trying to protect. And that matters. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Women do not need to become emotionless to be respected. Women do not need to suppress anger to be worthy. And women do not owe endless emotional comfort to a society that often refuses to offer the same in return. Your emotions are not inconveniences. They are signals. Now, that does not mean every expression of anger is healthy. Healing still requires accountability, reflection, emotional regulation, self-awareness, compassion, and boundaries. But there is a massive difference between healthy anger and the cultural fear of female anger. One is human, the other is conditioning. And the more women learn to trust themselves emotionally, the harder it becomes for systems, institutions, workplaces, relationships, and toxic people to manipulate them through guilt, shame, fear, or obligation. That matters. Your voice matters. Your safety matters. Your boundaries matter. Your emotions matter. And your anger, when understood, respected, and channeled intentionally, can become part of your liberation instead of something you constantly apologize for. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to stop shrinking. And you are allowed to exist as a fully human woman instead of a permanently emotionally convenient one. All right, my hive. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another woman who has ever been told that she was too emotional, too intense, too much or too difficult simply for expressing herself honestly. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the Hint Hive Amplifying Women's Voices on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you love today's conversation, leave a review because it helps more women find the Hive and reminds the algorithm that women's voices deserve to be amplified. You can also connect with me through my coaching work and join our growing Hive community online, where we can continue these conversations in a supportive, empowering, and emotionally honest space. And if this episode sparked something in you, I encourage you to spend some time reflecting on this question. What have I been taught to suppress in order to make other people comfortable? That question alone can change your life. Until next time, ladies, remember, you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to feel anger. You are allowed to protect your peace. And you do not need to make yourself smaller to deserve love, safety, respect, or belonging. See you next time, ladies. This podcast is powered by Kelly Hint Empowerment Coaching, as well as Kelly M. Hint LMHC and The Cranky Counselor. To find out more about coaching services, head over to CoachKellyHint.com. If you'd like to know more about the psychotherapy services I offer to individuals within the state of New York, you can check out KellyMHint.com. And if you'd like to learn more about aromatherapy, you can check out TheCrankyCounselor.com.